Jai Sri Ram, Jai Sri Krishna, Jai Sri Mahavishnu, Jai Sanatana Sampradaya, Jai Vyasashram, Jai Veda Vidyalaya. The beautiful oneness is only one and way out. Is the only one and the way out for all our intricacies. It is only through knowledge. It is only through the knowledge of oneness we can come out of the clutches of humanity. We can transcend humanity. We can accomplish enlightenment. So, with this invocation, I invite each and every sincere aspirant for this grandest spiritual discourse. You are welcome. Thank you. Duality, non-duality. Advaita is called as non-duality. But from my point of view, Advaita should be rightly interpreted as oneness. Oneness. Oneness is still grander than non-duality. So, from my point of view, the comprehensive knowledge of oneness is inevitable. Every aspirant should have the comprehensive knowledge of the oneness, the so-called Omkaram. I am of the opinion that Omkaram is not dual, it is not non-dual, but it is still grander than non-duality from my point of view. So, with that invocation, let us shift our gears to chapter number 5, verse number 3. As I have already made it very clear that this beautiful chapter, I am in love with this chapter. This chapter comprises of 29 slokas, and we can make this beautiful chapter into two integral parts. The first part is sloka number 1 to 13. The second part is sloka number 14 to 29. Yesterday, I mean to say, in the other episode, I have made it very clear that Lord Sri Krishna, the grandest enlightened being, the master teacher, is never of the opinion that there are two different paths, such as karma yoga, such as karma sannyasa. He was not under, he is quite contra. He has opposed that ignorant stupidity, but only to console Arjuna for a while. He has just uttered sloka number 2. Today, let us understand the original teachings, the grandest, beautiful spiritual teachings taught by Lord Sri Krishna, especially the insight of the slokas taught by grandest Sri Krishna. Chapter number 5, verse number 3. Chapter number 5, verse number 3.
ज्ञेयः स नित्यसन्न्यासी यो न द्वेष्टि न काङ्क्षति निद्वन्द्वो हि महाबाहो सुखं बन्धात् प्रमुच्यते. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. O mighty armed Arjuna!
Okay. See, my dear aspirants, Jneyaha sanitya sannyasi yona dveshti na kanshati nidvandvo hi mahabaho Sukham bandhat pramuchyate. This is the actual eloquence uttered by Lord Sri Krishna. But this ISKCON scripture, which is the well-known version as it is, Bhagavath Geetha as it is, Prabhupada. So they are under opinion, from their point of view, it is like this. One who neither hates, nor desires the fruits of his activities, is known to be renounced. So only these two qualities constitute the renunciation. If you want to become a renunciant, you have got to discard hate from your feeling. Then only you will become renunciant. Then only you are entitled to call yourself as renunciant. So, as per their opinion, you have got to have two prerequisite qualities to transform yourself into a renunciant. The first quality is you have got to hate the hate. You should discard hate, vengeance from your thinking pattern. And another is you should never expect the result from the act performed. That is the thing. Such a person, free from all dualities. The third condition is he should be beyond duality. Easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. O mighty armed Arjuna. So, if you analyze their point of view, they are of opinion that if one aspirant wants to transform himself into a renunciant, it is inevitable for him to have three beautiful qualities. Quality number one, the step number one, he should not have any hatred in his thinking pattern. Step number two, he should be desireless, in the sense he should perform the act but should never expect the result. Never expect the result. Third requisite is he should be beyond duality. Then only he is entitled to call himself as renunciant. But I strongly oppose this explanation, their perception. It is not true. It is only a misunderstanding, misconception. See, why? Because, see, I'll explain my version. It is up to you to choose between these two. Because the opening part of this sloka is Gneyaha, Gneyaha, Gneyaha. Gneyaha Sanitya Sannyasi. Gneyaha Sanitya Sannyasi. Yo nadvesti na kanshati nidvandvo hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. Okay? So, from my point of view, it is like this. Gneyaha, Gneyaha, Gneyaha. Knowable, knowable, knowable. Gneyaha, Gneyaha, Gneyaha. Should be known, should be known, should be known. In the sense, this realization is inevitable for all the human aspirants. Every human aspirant should realize this. That is, God is Nitya Sannyasi and I am God. I am God and God is Nitya Sannyasi. What is Nitya Sannyasi? God is always renunciant. What is Nitya Sannyasi? God is always renunciant. The innate consciousness of divinity itself is renunciation. The innate consciousness of divinity itself is renunciation. God is a Nitya Sannyasi because the so-called hatred, vengeance, vendetta are never in his innate consciousness, are never part and parcel of his innate consciousness. God never desires anything from the physicality, from the actions performed by the embodiment, the so-called karma. And by the way, naturally is transcendental to duality, is beyond duality. One who realizes this truth, that I am God and God is Nitya Sannyasi, and Nitya Sannyasi is always beyond hate, is always beyond duality, is always beyond desiring the result from the acts performed. One who has realized that beautiful truth will come out of the clutches of humanity without any hardships, without any sacrifices, without any rituals, without any practices, just like that, so easily, so coolly, so comfortably, chilled. That's it. I'm of that opinion. Again I repeat, Jneyaha, Jneyaha, Jneyaha. That means knowable, knowable, knowable. Jneyaha, the opening itself plays a crucial part. The nucleus of this beautiful sloka itself is Jneyaha, Jneyaha, Jneyaha. One should know, one should know, one should know. In the sense, this realization is inevitable for every human aspirant. Every human aspirant it is inevitable for every human aspirant to understand this, to realize this. What should be the realization? I am God and God is Nitya Sannyasi. If you are not God, why should you know about God? I am God and God is Nitya Sannyasi. What is Nitya Sannyasi? God is always renunciant. God is always renunciant. God is Nitya Sannyasi. Why you are calling God as Nitya Sannyasi? A renunciant forever, always renunciant, renunciant forever. Because the so-called hatred, the so-called vengeance, the so-called vendetta are never part and parcel of the innate consciousness of God. They do not constitute in the dictionary of God. And one more thing, God never desires anything from the physicality, from the actions performed by the embodiment, the so-called karma. It is his original consciousness. He is beyond duality. He will not analyze this incarnation as good or bad, as successful or failure. Like that he will not analyze. From his point of view, the incarnation itself is just a myth. From his point of view, the so-called Sat doesn't suit to the incarnation. So, he will not analyze this life from the point of view of humanity, and he will never say that good and bad, success and failure. Those terms are not used while describing this life. One who realizes this truth will come out of the clutches of humanity without suffering any hardships, so comfortably, without suffering pains and sacrifices. I am of that opinion. You are at your liberty to select among these two. Because the more and more you are preferring conditions, you will never come out of the clutches of this bondage. So, my dear aspirants, I am proclaiming very clearly. Step number 1. The first and foremost transformation in your thinking pattern should be, the first realization should be, I am God. The second realization should be, God is a renunciant. And he is renunciant always. He is going to continue the renunciation forever. The first and foremost thing is Aham Brahmasmi. The second thing is Brahma is a Nitya Sannyasi. The first realization should be Aham Brahmasmi. The second realization should be Brahma Nitya Sannyasi. The first realization should be I am God. The second realization should be God is a Nitya Sannyasi or a renunciant forever and always. So there is no need for you to renounce, to become renunciant now. Am I clear? There is no need for you to become a renunciant now freshly. Just realize you are renunciant forever. See, a young boy in a beautiful conference, and he has begun to proclaim that one day or other I am going to become a masculine gender. Why should he proclaim like that? See, he's already a boy. Why should he transform himself why should he promise that one day or other day I will transform myself into a masculine gender? It is stupidity, no? So, here the grandest beautiful teachings of Lord Sri Krishna is Jneyaha Sanitya Sannyasi. Jneyaha Sanitya Sannyasi. Means, oh aspirant, realize that you are always a Nitya Sannyasi. No need for you to become a sannyasi freshly. Just realize the fact that I am God and the innate consciousness of God is Nitya Sannyasi. Why? Because in the thinking pattern of God, there is no hate, there is no vendetta, there is no vengeance. Nadveshti. It is not that Nadveshti will become Nitya Sannyasi. Nitya Sannyasi is having a miraculous quality, that is Nadveshti. And the second thing is, God is always Nitya Sannyasi, and Nitya Sannyasi will never desire the result from the act performed or from the physicality. The third thing is always beyond duality. In the sense, God never analyzes this human incarnation from the point of view of human being. It is only the human being analyzes this life as good and bad, success and failure. That is the thing. So, one who realizes this truth can come out of the clutches of humanity without sufferings, without hardships, without sacrifices, just like that. So coolly, so chilled, so easily he can come out of this clutches. That is the thing. My dear aspirants, the so-called renunciation is not an act to be performed. It is a realization to be realized. Am I clear? My dear aspirants, I am making it very clear. The so-called renunciation is not an act to be performed. Is not a thinking which should be discarded. It is a realization. The realization number 1, the first realization should be truly accept the truth that I am God. The second realization should be the God is a Nitya Sannyasi. 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 Another quality is, why he is Nitya Sannyasi? Because in the thinking pattern of God, there is never an unenlightened factor called hate, blame, vengeance, vendetta. This type of stupidity, this garbage is never in the thinking pattern of God. God is beyond this. And one more innate consciousness is God never ever expects anything from the physical world which is the replica of myth, the so-called asat. ब्रह्म सत्य जगन मिथ्या, मिथ्या रूप जगत से ईश्वर क्या मांगता है? मिथ्या रूप जगत में इतना क्षमता क्या है ताकि जगत में है, ईश्वर में नहीं है? ईश्वर को देने का क्षमता इसमें नहीं है. ईश्वर को देने का क्षमता ये दृश्यमान जगत में कुछ भी नहीं है, क्योंकि ईश्वर सत्य का प्रतीक है और दृश्यमान जगत असत्य का प्रतीक है. That's it. And God will never analyze this incarnation as good and bad, success or failure. That is the thing. One who realizes that I am God, that I am renunciant. Why I am renunciant? Because God is beyond these stupidities. If you just realize that, you can come out of the clutches of humanity without suffering any hardships, just like that. It is very easy for you. Or else you go on renouncing, sacrificing, then it will be a mess for you. You will be never able to come out of the clutches of humanity. It is a laborious process. From my point of view, it is like this. Again I read, Jnayaha, Jnayaha, Jnayaha. Knowable, knowable, knowable. Jnayaha, Jnayaha, Jnayaha. Should be known, should be known, should be known. Jnayaha, from my point of view, is this realization is inevitable for all the aspirants. Jnayaha, from my point of view, I have analyzed the grandest word Jnayaha as inevitable realization for all the human beings. Jnayaha, from my point of view, is inevitable realization for all the human aspirants. What is the inevitable realization? That God is a Nitya Sannyasi. God is a Nitya Sannyasi. I am God and God is a Nitya Sannyasi. God is always renunciant. The innate consciousness of divinity itself is renunciation. God is a Nitya Sannyasi because the so-called hatred, vengeance, vendetta are never part and parcel of the innate consciousness. When you do not have it, how do you discard it? When you do not have those ignorant tendencies within your thinking pattern, then there is no point in discarding this. Kada? Yes. God never desires anything from the physicality, from the actions performed by from the acts performed by the embodiment, the so-called karma, because embodiment itself is a yantra. He knows pretty well that the embodiment is not entitled to give the result. He is beyond duality. One who realizes this truth will come out of the clutches of humanity without suffering any hardships so comfortably, without suffering pains and sacrifices. It is up to you to decide. So with this explanation, let us shift our gears from chapter number 5, verse number 3 to chapter number 5, verse number 4.
सांख्ययोगौ पृथग्बालाः प्रवदन्ति न पण्डिताः एकमप्यास्थितः सम्यगुभयोर्विन्दते फलम्.
And in the previous sloka, again, word to word translation is Jneyaha. Oh, Telugulo rasava inni. Jneyaha, knowable, should be known. Nitya Sannyasi, always renunciant. Yonadveshti, never adores, abhors. Nakanshati, never desires. Nirdvandaha, free from all dualities. He, certainly, Mahabaho, O mighty armed one. Sukham, easily, comfortably, happily. Bandhat pramuchyate, from human bondage, accomplishes liberation. That is the thing. So now, chapter number 5, verse number 4. Sankhya yoga prudak bhala pravadanti na pandita ఏకమస్థిత సమ్య గుభో యోగ్ ఏంటది
Samyagubayor vindate phalam.
సమ్య గుభ్రో విందతే ఫలం. Yes, sir. From their opinion, only the ignorant speak of devotional services, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world.
Only the ignorant speak of devotional service as being different from the analytical study of the material world. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the result of both.
చూడండి, ఓన్లీ ద రిజల్ట్స్ ఆఫ్ బోత్, పర్వాలేదు అదేం ప్రాబ్లం. ఓన్లీ ద ignorant speaks of devotional services as being different from the analytical study of the material world. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to the one of these paths achieves the results of the both. See, let me explain their opinion. I am not of this opinion. I don't agree with them. I differ totally. Only the ignorant speaks of devotional service. From his point of view, devotional service means yoga or karma. He wants to explain like this. Only an ignorant beings, they feel that karma is different from yoga. From his point of view, he has defined karma as devotional service. He has defined yoga as analytical study of the material world. Again, I repeat, my dear aspirants, this is not my opinion. This is the opinion of Bhagavath Geetha as it is described by the grandest being called Prabhupada. Mr. Prabhupada is of the opinion that only the ignorant beings differentiate between yoga and Sankhya. Sorry, karma and yoga. Karma and yoga. But the enlightened beings, they oppose this feeling. From the point of view of enlightened being, they both are one. From my point of view, it is like this. So
The prism of an enlightened being is always grander and quite contra to the prism of an immatured being. Only immatured beings will be of the opinion that Sankhya and Yoga are two different paths, but the enlightened beings do not accept this. Moreover, they emphasize that the Sankhya and Yoga are one and the same, as they too are integral parts of spirituality. An aspirant should have comprehensive knowledge of these two integral parts, Sankhya and Yoga, then only he will be able to accomplish the true fruit or result.
see, my dear aspirants, chapter number 5, verse number 4, he has given a comparative study of the prism of an enlightened being the prism of an immatured being. The prism of an immatured being. The prism of enlightened being is the so-called karma, the so-called yoga. They both are one and the same. Or the so-called karma yoga, the so-called jnana yoga, they both are one and the same. Or the so-called karma sannyasam, the so-called karma yoga, they both are integral parts of one beautiful spirituality. In the sense, the spirituality consists of two integral parts. One is the grandest yoga, the other is grandest sannyasi or karma. Okay? So the grandest scripture called spirituality comprises of two integral parts. The integral part number one is yoga. The integral part number two is sannyasam or karma. Okay, let me explain. The prism of an enlightened being is like this. The prism of an immatured being, Bala. The prism of an immatured being. An immatured being feels that they both are different. They both are quite contrary to each other. It is not the matured enlightened being's opinion. Only the stupid beings, only the immature beings, they feel that these two are two different paths and they both are quite contrary to each other. But the enlightened being feels that the so-called yoga, the so-called karma are one and the same. They both are integral parts of beautiful spirituality. And he emphasizes that, moreover, they emphasize that they both are one and the same. And they also proclaim, they also emphasize that unless an aspirant is a master of these two, then only he will be able to accomplish the true result. That is the thing. The same, I am of this opinion. Again I repeat, the prism of an enlightened being is always grander and quite contrary to the prism of an immature being. Only immature beings are of the opinion that Sankhya and Yoga are two different paths. But the enlightened beings do not accept this. They differ with this. Moreover, they emphasize that the Sankhya and Yoga are one and the same, as the two are integral parts of spirituality. An aspirant should have a comprehensive knowledge of these two integral parts, the so-called Sankhya and Yoga. Then only he will be able to accomplish the true, truthful fruit or the result. So, today, the nucleus of today's episode is, the moment you happen to hear about chapter number 5, verse number 3, you should be reminded of the truth. You should be reminded of the fact that chapter number 5, verse number 3 speaks about the concept called Nitya Sannyasi. Chapter number 5, verse number 3 speaks about the concept called Nitya Sannyasi. I am God. The innate consciousness of God is renunciation. There is no need for me to become a renunciant. Renunciation is a thing which should be realized. It's not a thing to do. It's not a karma. It's not an act to be performed. It's a realization to be realized. What is the realization? I am a God. God is a Nitya Sannyasi. God, in the dictionary of God, there is no term called hate. So if you understand the crux of this beautiful teaching, whenever you will not practice to discard hate, if you understand the insight of this beautiful sloka, you will not do any ritual to discard hate. But whenever hate happens within your thinking pattern, the alarm bell rings and it cautions you that this blame, this hatred, this vengeance, this vendetta have nothing to do with you. It is only these are only the tendencies of your character, the tendencies of your humanity, the tendencies of your asura, the tendencies of your materialistic human embodiment. Am I clear, my dear aspirants? Whenever the hate, the vengeance, the hatred, the revenge, the vendetta, these ignorant being, these unenlightened thinking happens in your thinking pattern, the alarm bell will caution you, don't worry. These unenlightened tendencies have nothing to do with your original consciousness. In the same way, whenever you have a temptation of desiring something from the materialistic world, again an alarm bell will alert you. This desiring anything from physicality has nothing to do with your original consciousness. It is the tendency of your character or the so-called humanity. It is human nature, not divine nature. And whenever you have begun to analyze this life as it is good or bad, success or failure, then also the alarm bell will caution you, saying that, oh, this is the tendency of human being. It is human nature. In your divine consciousness, you do not have this tendency. If you are just smart enough and if you could realize this truth, these facts, this innate consciousness, so easily, so comfortably, without suffering any hardships, you can come out of the clutches of humanity just like that, cool and chilled. It is up to you to decide. Namaskar. Jayastu.